am live. Yeah, I've just been like hitting the button now before I'm even ready because who cares, right? Who cares? All right, so I think everything looks good. I think the sound is okay. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Welcome to the stream. It's gonna be a short one because it is 8:52. I started 22 minutes late, so I will just stream for 22 less minutes. That's how it goes. I'm not gonna do anything crazy like, you know, some people do like these 4-hour marathon streams. That's not me. I'm just gonna do a quick one. Okay, whoops, sorry. Let me tweet this real quick. You know what? I'll just do it on my thing up here. Let me see. I really need to start tweeting outside of streaming, but you know, whatever. What is this not safe for work freaking ad on my Twitter? Like, what is this? Like, what the heck? Necklace ad, but it's mostly cleavage? That's not good. Please, Twitch, don't ban me. I would appreciate it if you don't ban me. Okay, so what am I gonna say? Live with Ruby web frameworks, of course. I can't get enough. No, that's weird. I'm just gonna say live making a Ruby web framework. Yes. I'm just gonna do a little like rant one. I don't like, hopefully no one really watches this because it's gonna be one of those ones where it's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? You know what I'm gonna talk about? I don't think people really like, for me, this one blog post kind of hit home. Like, okay, so Paul Graham, right, the guy who behind Y Combinator, well, his wife is too, though, behind it too. I mean, I gotta say that too. So he had this thing about stamp collectors. Let me see if I can find it. And it always like stuck with me, like, wow, that's jacked up, but it's so true. Like, and I don't want to be, the bus ticket theory of genius. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So yeah, so here we go. So basically what he's trying to say is, he's trying to say, so like, you know, it says you need natural ability and determination, right? But you need to be obsessed with something, right? Like a particular topic, right? So it's like, it needs to be on your mind all the time to like become successful at the thing, to like really set yourself like above everyone else that's also doing the same thing. But the thing is, you also need it to align with the market, right? So like, if there's a market need or like want for your particular obsession, you will probably get ahead. Not because like you're smarter or more motivated than other people. It's just that your like wants and desires, like your obsession, like matches up with the market at the current time. It's a pretty crazy. Am I like really? I feel like I'm really low. Like I'm just like this weird floating head. Hold on. Like, am I on a Zoom call right now? Like, what am I doing? What's going on here? Okay, I think that I'm like a little bit more up now. Okay. All right. So yeah, like this whole bus ticket theory of genius. You got to read this. It's really good. Man, my posture is horrible too. Like what? Oh my gosh. Okay, I gotta stop looking at myself. All right, so yeah, like this is a really good article, and it's always stuck with me. And I don't know like if many people have read this because like it's more like his newer stuff. It's 2019, right? And so he goes into like stamp collectors or bus ticket like people who collect bus tickets, and like obviously people who collect bus tickets, that's not a marketable skill. Right, it's like a weird obsession, like collecting bus tickets. Like you know, you get on a bus and like you have a little paper ticket and you collect it. Or like, I mean, I guess a better one would be like movie ticket collecting. Like you go watch a movie and you like collect the movie ticket, and it's cool to like keep track of like all the things that you've watched and all the things that you've done. But it's not like productive economically. So you're probably, if you go to a lot of movies and you like, that's your thing, unless you're like a movie critic, you're probably not going to. You should be a movie. Actually, if you're gonna do that, you should be a movie critic. But the bus ticket collecting, it's like you're not critiquing buses, right? Although I guess you could critique buses, but There might be a way to turn any obsession into a marketable thing, but I think some obsessions are harder than others to turn into a marketable thing. Maybe I got the wrong thing from this. Maybe bus ticket collecting is a good thing. I don't know. Maybe I should read it again. What I took away from it the first time was that you don't want to be a bus ticket collector. I say all this bus ticket stuff because making web frameworks, especially in Ruby in 2022, is like a weird hobby of mine, and I feel like I'm collecting bus tickets. And I don't think it's necessarily a good thing to do this, but I persist, and I don't know why. I'm looking for like the perfect abstraction over web development in Ruby, and I don't know, whatever. I don't think I'm gonna find it, but I do want to go over this just like quickly for like a half an hour, and I want to talk about what I've been doing. So, okay, I've done this 2 different ways. I've made an application with magic link authentication with emails, right? So it's I've done this with I made a sort of like a programmatic SEO thing. So what it does is you have data, right? In like, it could be a database or a CSV file. You have a template of a web page, and you have like little holes in your template, like little placeholders, right? And the placeholders correspond to the column names in the CSV, or like if it's like a JSON array, or with like the keys in the JSON array of hashes, right? So it doesn't matter what the data is, but the names match up, right? Your placeholders in your template and your CSV. And then what happens is you come up with all these templates for these pages, right? Like you might have like 10 or 20 templates for like what a page looks like. And then you have all the content in the CSV, and you like mash them together, right? So I did that like with this, like copy code clips, right? So like it was like really rudimentary. But what it is I have the data in the database, and what you're looking at is sort of like a superficial thing. So like you can see there's not that many code examples here. But if you go to the sitemap, right, like the guts are in the sitemap, right? So like it maps multiple URLs with like slightly different phrasing to the same template, right? So that's the secret sauce, right, of how to do that. So instead of like, I mean, I thought about like, oh, Stack Overflow, obviously this is Stack Overflow, right? This is a Stack Overflow clone. But it is not like user-generated content. I made this content myself. I think user-generated content, like on Stack Overflow, you get reputation, and I don't know how valuable the reputation is anymore. Like, I don't know if anyone's ever been like, oh man, this guy has a 10,000 reputation on Stack Overflow, we should hire him. Is that a thing? I would love to know actually if that's like a real, maybe I should ask people if that's like a real thing. But user-generated content can only take you so far, right? Like, I think what do they call it? They call it UGC for short, but they used to anyway. It was like all the rage in the early like 2010s or like late 2000s. You know, with the rise of like social media, right? Like that's Instagram and like Facebook and Stack Overflow and like a bunch of Quora, like a bunch of companies were riding high on user-generated content, right? Like, how do we get the users addicted to the thing and like upload the content so we can put ads on it and make money, right? And like, it's crazy that they never even like, they never thought, oh, you know what? Maybe we'll share the content with, we'll share the ad revenue with the users who are actually doing the real work. It was, to me, it was really jacked up. Like, it was really messed up. And it's still like Instagram's kind of coming around now, but Facebook is not, right? Like, I mean, you could say like, oh, there's some benefit to the users because they get to like connect with each other, and there's like this serendipitous thing, but it's all kind of like murky and like not very straightforward. I think there's a power law, and the power law says like the majority of users, like 99%, will never like get any benefit out of the system, right? And then the 1% will get some benefit. Like, you know, you look at like influencers, right? They're actually making real money from social, right? But like the majority of the people are not. And this power law, you see it pop up everywhere whenever a thing is, the cost of creating a new version of a thing or like a copy of a thing is very low. So like software has it too, right? Like there's a million Ruby web frameworks, for example, right? to like talk about me, but like there's Rails, right? Maybe I should change this to just chatting. No, I'm gonna do some programming. But it's like there's a million web frameworks, but like if you look at Ruby, specifically even the niche Ruby, right? Like Rails has the 99% of the market share, like the mind share. I wouldn't say market share, mind share of Ruby web frameworks, right? And the rest of them do not. Like Sinatra might have like a little bit, and like there's like other ones that are more esoteric, but for the most part, the power law applies, right? And it applies in every programming language, not even just web frameworks, but like everything. So like ML frameworks, right? Like TensorFlow, or JavaScript frameworks, right? Web frameworks, or yeah, look at React, right? It has 99% of the mind share. And there's other stuff too, like Vue and Svelte and stuff, but like realistically, like it's not really like a thing, right? Like, I mean, if you compare the two, like the few options the main like options, obviously there's like a huge tail of things that I've never even heard of, right? That no one's ever heard of. But yeah, that's just how it goes. The power law is in full effect all the time, especially when the thing that you're looking at or the data that you're looking at is like cheap to create stuff, or the cost to create another one of it is very low. So the power law, you can't ignore it. You can't ignore the power law. I mean, I'm ignoring it because that's what I'm doing now. I'm making this dumb web framework, even though no one's really going to use it. I mean, it's mostly for me, but all right. So anyway, so I made this to bring it way back to what I was talking about. I made this programmatic SEO thing. It basically, I have a list of phrases that you could search for, right? And then it goes to the same like little code snippet, right? It's just an experiment. And I have a few. I haven't really like uploaded anymore, but I will. Anyway, so I've been kind of distracted with this other thing, right? So like the style's obviously not very good, but so there's really a few things that this does differently than Rust. So I thought. So I did the programmatic SEO thing with like a one file. I was like, what if I do everything in one file, right? How would that look, right? So I did. So here's an example of, actually, here's what it looks like. What do I call? I called it something, right? What did I call it? Oh, you know what? Let me do this off because I don't even know what it's called in here. And I deleted a bunch of projects. So hold on, let me find it. Okay, hold on. Let me find it. Oh, did I really? Okay, yeah, I guess I did. Alright, so we will go over here. I didn't realize that I renamed it. Okay, so there's one file where everything happens, right? It's right here. So, well, one file like outside of the web framework code, right? I already talked about it a little bit, but I talked about it like 2 streams ago or 3, I can't remember. But I promise next stream will be more fun. I'll do leak code or with Go or something. I don't know. I'll learn Go. I'll learn something trendy. I swear. So anyway, this is all the code for the app is here, right? So like everything is in line, like kind of like plugins in Rhoda, but like I ripped that, and then all the middleware is here. So like if you commented this out or deleted this, like you wouldn't get any of this middleware anymore, right? So there's no question of like which middleware comes first. You can just see it, right? You see everything. So this is generated, right? All this code is generated, like the app code is generated. Oh, speaking of generate, oh man, okay, I'm gonna take a quick tangent here. So this is something that I have been struggling with. Like, how can I generate Ruby code or generate any code, but then edit the file, and then also regenerate the code, but keep the changes that I've made the same, right? Like, so this was kind of holding me back from the one file thing, because I was like, if I'm just changing this file, how would I know what to change? So right, this person has been doing some crazy stuff. Oh, you know what? I probably shouldn't show this. Okay, hold on. Let me go to the your stars, right? Okay, here we go. Now that I'm like showing all my work stuff. Okay, hold on, let me see. It was, I think it was this. Yeah, I think it was this. Okay, so, you know, I've been doing some kind of exciting stuff, right? Okay, so this is really cool. So he kind of bases off this thing. He has this like parser and was doing all this stuff. But I think there was a, okay, so this sums it up, right? So like you have this like representation of what you want the code to be, like just the data of the code. And then, but now you can do it, it's like bidirectional code generation, right? So like it keeps track of it parses the existing file into an AST, and it says, okay, don't touch any of this white space or any of this stuff, right? And then, but we'll regenerate back into it. So, but you can make a change and still generate new code at the end or wherever. You can insert it wherever. With this thing called Monocle, right? So this thing has like a little he made a little DSL for it, but yeah, it's like you like look for, it's like XPath, you like look for the tokens that you're looking for. So like say it says match on result, right? And then you can like insert the template where you want it to be, right? And you can like set the name of the placeholder, right? And see, here it is, like you have this replacer, and you like update the AST, right? So you can change, so you can generate this book class, but then you can also like take the template and like put it back into the hash representation of what the template will be. So this is really cool. Like this changes the model name, right, from book, right, to product, right? And so like you could have made changes in between there, but it'll still rename the model. Like this is super exciting. Like this is really cool. It only works for Ruby right now, but technically this could work for any language, even with a different AST, right? We just need a different parser. So this is really cool. Like I got super excited about this. You know, it's still kind of experimental, but it's fine. So this kind of like unlocks a bunch of stuff. But anyway, so back to what I was doing. So I was doing one file apps, right? And I was like, how can I just shove everything, configuration, everything? Like I don't want configuration files. I don't want to see a config. Like the word config, like it's stuck in my mind as like I'm gonna be in this horrible code base, and like I need to configure things. Like I'm like shove it, like I'm like herding like cattle or something. Like no, I'm not doing that. I'm writing code. So like how can I just do all the config? So these are assets, right, that go from public to that get served from public, and they get concatenated in this order, right? So these exist in the app CSS folder, right? So it's called CSS, and it's similar. JS, right, is the same. And then this one, this like you can bundle static files if you're on production. And here's like I was like, how can I put migrations in here? So I put migrations in the thing, and I have routing here, and that's how it works. Like the whole thing is one class, and every time a request gets made, it instantiates a new object with the same class, and it routes to the methods that you define. That's it. That's the whole thing. But it actually turns out to be quite a bit of framework code. So I thought, okay, what if I just do the opposite? What if I go the other way, right? So like, what if I just make a dumb to-do zap, right? And what if instead I go the opposite way? Like, so what if I rip off Rails, right? So I keep some of the stuff from before, which I do like the middleware, and I like the asset handling. Like it's really simple. It's just serve the assets at 1 by 1 in development, or bundle them in production if you want. You know, they're already going to be minified because you're just grabbing them from the internet wherever. There's no like import maps or like any of this like nonsense. Like there's no Webpack or whatever. It's just CSS and JavaScript files. That's it. So like you want to use stuff that would like work with that. So like Alpine JS, Tailwind could work. It was working. Okay, so then you've got stuff like, so I was like, okay, I'll just do migrations, but like, instead of doing Ruby migrations, what if I just, how can I make so not only can I go multiple files, how can I make the framework code the smallest it can be, right? So the thing that I came up with is the idea. So like, if you think about conceptually, a web application is, oh wait, at the bare minimum is an HTTP request comes in, right? A router routes the request, right, based on paths in the URL to SQL, right? It could be SQL, but usually it's like a custom code which eventually bottoms out in SQL, right? Like usually, right? Obviously, like you can send emails, you can do webhooks, like you can do a bunch of stuff like API stuff, like to other SaaS things that are also SQL. But anyway, conceptually, if you just have like a classic 3-tier architecture, it's HTTP request, route, SQL, right? So it's like, what if I just had SQL, right? Like, what if I just rip off ESQL from Clojure, and I barely have to do anything. So here, I'll show you an example. So the way the migrations work, right, is you call this run migrations thing, and you can do something like this. You can say run migrations, and I did this with a string because I wanted there to be like a link to like the next. Like if you start at app.rb, what file goes next, right? Like where am I going? Like how do I follow the chain or the train of thought of like where do I go, right? Like what happens? So like the migrations are here in DB migrations, right? And so it's just like Rails migrations, except it's just SQL, right? Which Rails does have SQL migrations, but I reused the SQL. I reused the SQL idea of like named queries, and I used it for migrations, right? So like, I have one queries thing that like parses the query. It just goes line by line of the SQL file, and basically what it does is right here. This is it. So it checks to see if it's a name line. So like, it checks to see what was I doing? Migrations. So it checks to see if also you can do single table names in SQLite. That's something that Postgres you can't do because like you want to say user, but you can't. You have to say users, right? Like it's actually weird how much hacking like there was like in the thought process of like people using MySQL or Postgres. Like, oh, we'll just name every table plural, but then we'll name the model singular, and like there's all this weird mismatch. So yeah, I don't know, whatever. So anyway, so this looks for this, right? This name, right? So that's what it does. The first thing is it looks for the line, and it's called name, right? And then so that if it's a name, right, it creates a new array, right? And the array has it's like a triple, right? So it has the name, it has a placeholder, and it has a string IO, which is just like a string builder thing for Ruby. And the next thing it looks for is an FN, which I didn't want to do this, but I did do it because I don't know, I hate myself. Okay, so FN is like a method name in Ruby that will get called when you execute the SQL. So here's a good example, right? So like, actually this is a bad example, but I'll get to that in a second. So FN, it's looking for FN. So that would look something like FN. Here, I'll show you a better example. So that would be something like this, right? So like FN is first. So when you call this query find user.find and you give it an ID, a user ID, it executes this SQL statement, and it'll execute this method after the results come back from the database, right? That's what FN is. So that's FN, and then it looks for a SQL, right? So anything that's not white space or a comment or whatever, it interprets as SQL. So like it just gets all these lines. It will build the SQL query if it is. If it's a FN, it'll change nil to the function name, and it goes through all of those, and it basically turns the string builder, the string IO, into a string. and then it gets rid of any new lines for logging mostly. Like, you know, it's whatever. It's an integrated framework, so, you know, there's conventions, I guess. I don't know. Because I like to do canonical line logging like Stripe does. I think that was pretty genius. And it's like a more terse like output. So this is one way it could work, where you like make a struct based on the query keys, which is really dynamic, and like I'm not sure about it. So I kind of like ditch that. But so basically what I do is I parse this, and I parse this 2 times, one for the migrations and one for the regular queries, right? Okay, so that's one way that it's a little different than Rails, but let's keep going. Okay, so run migrations, and you know like where to go here. Like at least you can look at this and see like where they are, which is kind of nice. And this is just generated, so you don't have to type it out over and over again. Okay, so then you have bundle static files, which is like it just concatenates all the files with new lines and serves them all as one file. Which is like all the JS and all the CSS is one file in production if you want. And you could say you don't have to do run migrations. You can just run the little command line thing with like migrate, right? So then there's routes, right? And routes, there's a little pointer here, right? It looks kind of boilerplatey, which it is, but it's nice to see like what's happening. So I can go into routes, and it's just another class. With a bunch of class methods, and this is Elixir routing. I think I've talked about this. This is Elixir routing. It basically it has resource routing, but I'm not using that right now. So what you do is you just say resource, and you'd say like user, right, or whatever, and then you say like users controller, right, and then that would be that, right, and you could still have like that pointer. And you know what's nice about having the URL, which I didn't realize, is Rails actually it's really complicated. So like you would say resource users controller, and then let's say I wanted a URL that was like nested, right? Like users 1 like tags, like 2 like that. I would have to, if I was doing resource routing, which there's a movement in the Rails community to do movement. Jeez. There's like a trend or like a suggestion, I guess, to only use resource routes. So in Rails, you would do this, right? You would say users controller, do, and then you would like nest the whatever. You would say resource tags controller, right? And like that would give you the thing. Well, you would say resources actually, right? And that is actually bad. Like that's horrible now that I'm looking at it. Like, and now that I'm thinking about this, because if you had just done this, right? You could just say resource, users, user ID, tags, and then you can say tags controller. And not only does this add a prefix, and it can add any number of nested prefixes. It's on one line, and it just works with the same code. Like it takes that prefix, and it just prepends it to the. I was like, wait, what? Why didn't we just do this? Obviously, it's too late to change Rails, but like, dude, like once I had that realization, I was like, wow, this is I've been wasting time like doing things really complicated in a really complicated way, I think. So anyway, so this is routes, right? And it's pretty straightforward. So notice too, like there's the pointer again, like there's a symbol that represents an actual class, right? Or an actual class and an actual method. So you can like go to definition, right? You can go to definition on this, and it takes you straight to it. So if you ever get confused, you just fuzzy find routes, and you go, oh, okay, yeah, I can just do this, right? Oh, here it is. Okay, good. So anyway, this is a controller, right? So this is what I was talking about. I totally copied Rails most of the way. It's like a weird combination of Elixir, Rails, and Crystal, right? But without static typing and like the speed and the long compile times, right? So there's trade-off. But yeah, so here is a controller. So this is multi-file, just like Rails, right? So far. One thing that I ripped off Crystal is the views, or like this is like view component, but like built in. There's really like a few like very small, like minor differences, but actually I wouldn't say they're minor. I would say they're kind of major. So all views are in views, and so it's multi-file, right? There's a lot of files, and it's cool that to have the views be side by side, like with view component. I mean, yeah, it's kind of annoying to go, okay, sign up new, and there's a RB and there's a template, right? So I'm using this thing called, well, actually, I haven't forked it yet. Well, I did fork it, but I haven't pushed up my changes. I found this really cool thing called minimal operational templates, right? So this guy is like a legit Ruby hacker, right? Like he's like, I mean, he's really good. Like he's done really good work. He made Cuba, I think, or Zero or something. And he also made this minimum operational template, right? That's like moat, right? So it's a very simple and fast template engine. And the reason I love it is because it doesn't conflate. ERB conflates like print stuff to the page and like capture thing. Like you want to do capturing things. Like don't do any capture. Like what if you just didn't do any capturing, right? You don't actually need to capture anything. You know why? Because you can have a class called sign up new, right? And it could just have all the things that you would have. So this gets generated too. This is also generated. You would run, so I call this framework tentatively, I call it yes code, but like, I think I'm gonna go back to radical. I'm just gonna like rip out radical, it's like no one cares. But yeah, so you would call yes, generate, or you'd call yes gen, or yes g, right? Matt, what's up? Oh shoot, it's 9:23, yeah. Oh man, I feel kind of bad because I'm gonna get out of here in like a few minutes, but yeah, so you call yes g, right, or generate or whatever, and you would say like views, right, and then you would say or you'd say view, and then you would say sign up new, right, or you would just give it the file name sign up new, and it'll do like case stuff. So yes, and then when that happens, it generates both things, and you can also give it the accessors too, so you can say like it has a user or whatever, right? And it'll generate this, like it'll generate this class, and it'll generate this little pointer here. So what's cool about Vim is, I don't know, you can probably do some other things, but if you do this, downside of the separate view classes that you have to pass in any context that they need. Yes, you do. Yeah, that I know, exactly. Yes, so that's what I'm talking about. Like the thing is, but when you generate them, it's not horrible. Like if you just generated the context, like user, right? That's not horrible, but yes, I know what you're saying. Like I have to pass it into the class like normal. I can't just do at user new, right? I can't just do that and be like, oh yeah, you know, the framework knows how to render it like Rails, right? Instance variables, it's perfect. But the upside, so like, okay, think about this. The upside, so that's the trade-off, right? Is like, yeah, it's explicit. But the downside of Rails is like it's super freaking confusing. Like helpers, so Rails generates a helper, and then like, but you can also have helper methods in the controller. The controller and the view are like weirdly linked together, and it's kind of like it's kind of confusing at first. Like what is going on here? Like how do I test this? How do I do anything? You know, outside of the view context. So like now you have like this weird like application controller. Like renderer or something, right? And then you're like, oh yeah, like let me render a bit of HTML in an action cable, or like a channel, action cable channel, right? It's like really awkward and horrible. But if you have reusable view classes and you had something like action cable, right, which I am going to get to, well actually I haven't done that yet, but I'm going to do something in that space, WebSockets. But yeah, like, so like you would just call it, right? Just like you're doing here, and you would just pass in whatever from the channel instead of from the controller. So it's explicit, but it's more like less like a hack, right? More like sound, I guess. Like, I don't know. It's explicit, but yeah. Okay, so this is cool too, because not only that, but you can say, you can inherit like a layout. Wait, am I totally frozen? Is this thing on? Oh yeah, I'm good. That's weird. The Twitch thing is like totally dead. Oh, that's so weird. Oh yeah, I'm good. All right. So yeah, that was really weird. I don't know what happened. Did it actually like quit? No drop frames. Okay, yeah, that was weird. All right. So, okay, so yeah, this is really cool because you can inherit from the layout, and the layout is also just a class, right? So I can go over to layout, and can I go to layout? There we go. So your layout inherits from YesView, which is like the base thing. I think this is really cool because you can do stuff like this where you can like define methods in the class, and they become like part of the thing. So like here, okay, so we should talk about moat, right? So moat, it has 3 ways to like inject stuff into the page, right? So I added a little bit like for escaping, but because it didn't have escaping, which is like insane. I didn't want to like call like a method everywhere. So I ripped off mustache, right? So like moat has mustache like style stuff. So this is escaped. And this is escaped, right? And then there's a way, so I don't know if anyone knows this. If you read the ERB docs from like the actual ERB implementation in Ruby, you can do this in ERB. Percent, and then a line, and then it'll interpret it as like Ruby, right? And then anything in between the do and the end, it'll just repeat, right? Or if it's each or whatever, it'll just do the thing. So that's really cool. So it's kind of like content. It's kind of like capturing, but like not as stupid, I guess, or not as like a hack. Like the hacks, the regular expression hacks to get ERB capturing to work is like crazy. So like look at this code. Look at it. This is 68 lines. Like no, it's 48 lines minus like 2 lines for comments. So like it's 46 lines of code to get Ruby templating working. It is fast. It's super quick. It doesn't matter. Like Ruby's slow, so this looks like view component. Yes, yeah, I did say that. Yeah, this is exactly like view component, but it's like built into the thing. So all the great ideas from Rails over the last like whatever years, I like put it in there, and Crystal or not Crystal, but and Lucky and everything. So yeah, this is exactly like view component. It's a total copy, a total rip. So anyway, this moat thing is cool, but the only thing that it didn't have, here, I copied it into my thing. Emote, right? Okay, so the only thing it didn't have was this escaping, right? So like I did triple, like just like mustache does, so you can unescape things. Otherwise it's escaped, right? So like I called it emote. I'm gonna fork it, and because I don't want to change this guy's thing. Like I don't want to do like a pull request and be like, hey, add escaping, because obviously he doesn't want to. But yeah, so I changed this a little bit to like modernize this, because like Rubacop was like yelling at me. But yeah, so this adds just CGI escape, and then it does the escaping with a .h, right? Just like Jeremy Evans ERB implementation. And then so it's really cool. So you can do escape and unescape, and by default it's escaped, right? And then unescape is 3, just like mustache. And then the percent, and then this is multi-line, but I don't really think I have used that very much, but I guess you can. So yeah, this is really cool. So you can do stuff like this, percent, and then like it's the line. And I also have syntax highlighted because it's very similar to ERB, so like it's not horrible. But yeah, so it's view component. You have methods on the class, and you use those in the thing, or you can pass in params as a hash, like to a partial, right? So it does partials, and it does, or I guess everything's kind of a component, right? Wait, sorry. Oh, okay. All right. So okay. So this is really cool. So not only that, but you can do like, I have the Rails path helpers, right? Which like the Rails kind of path helpers, but it's just controller name minus controller method name path. It's very boring, very consistent. There's no plural, there's no singular, nothing. So anyway, yeah, this is cool. And so this is the layout. And then it's cool that there's like a little point. You don't need this view thing. It's like kind of boilerplatey, but it's nice to see where it is, because in Vim you can do GF, and then it'll take you to the file that you've highlighted. So it's cool to like jump around, right? So anyway, back to sign up, right? So here's sign up, right? It has a accessor, right? So like just like it's a method, it's user. And then here you can see that the form is just an HTML form with a method post and then no action. So it's going to submit to the same route, right? So like if it's get/signup, it's going to be post/signup. The only thing that stinks about not doing the capture, which is definitely a huge trade-off, which is not great, which I haven't really thought about yet, is the CSRF fields without JavaScript. Like, this really isn't great, but look, I don't know. There's trade-offs. I don't know what it is. Okay, so this is here, right? So like this is just like you know, ERB, right? So oh, this is my little constraint thing that I did. My little thing. So like here you can see I have named constraints in the I already talked about this, but I kept this. So you can say not null and unique, and it actually generates methods on the class, the model, which I haven't gotten the models yet, but yeah. And then you can do like named constraints, right? And you can even have these from the any constraint that you make in any existing schema will automatically get translated into methods on the models. So you can have like a weird schema, but it doesn't matter. Like, it'll still just do the thing. It has no bearing on like the framework. You don't have to do anything special. So that's kind of cool. So anyway, let's go to the models. So the models, this is where things get weird. From Rails, this is where things get really not good, or I guess different. So it looks like a view. It looks like a view, right? Like a view component thing, like the yes view. It has queries, right? So like this is where I like ripped off SQL from Clojure, and I married it with like object orient, like an ORM kind of. So like all writes, so like insert, update, delete are generated dynamically because that would be a pain, right? But all your read queries you write in SQL. Oh, they're generated. The basic ones like find, all, and like some other ones like recent, like where they order by created at. They're generated, but you can declare queries, and you can declare queries from like other, right, or whatever, right? And when you do this query thing, it defines the methods, right? So it defines methods. It defines methods, singleton methods, and it defines it defines singleton methods. So I'll just show you an example first before I like get into it, the implementation. It's not like, but it's really simple. Like, it's super simple. So anyway, here's an example, right? All, right? So like that's just select from user, right? And yes, so you have this user.all, so you'd call user.all, right? And so it generates that, it does the define singleton method for every query in the file, and then you get back the user class, right? You'd get back the user class, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna make more like columns, kind of like Active Record does. I think actually, you know what? I'm not even sure what I did here. Let's look at it. So it defines the singleton method, and it looks for the function thing. So it supports first, and it supports value, but that's pretty much it. Like, it's not, so you can like a count, and you can get like the actual integer or whatever, the floating point back. You can do like average or whatever in SQL. So there's no DSLs, and like this is the whole point of this framework is to do less. Like, the framework code is going to be very small, and like what can I like get away with to like make that happen? So multiple files get generated. There's like more code, like a little bit more code that gets generated, but the framework code is small. It's a lot smaller. That's why I rely on SQL a lot. So anyway, the way it works is it defines the methods. It parses the queries right here, which is I was talking about that before. It parses the queries line by line, and then it sort of like just scoops them all up, and it puts them in this array, this queries array of triples, name, function, SQL. And then if there is a function first or value, it will call get first value, which is like the Sparkle Motion SQLite library thing, or it'll call get first row, right? If you say first on the function. So and then it'll also raise if you give it an exclamation mark at the end of the query. So user SQL is here, right? And so this one will always return either empty or nothing. This one will return the first thing, but it'll just return nil if it's first. This one will actually raise a 404, right? So here in login controller, you can see I'm using that here. I'm actually not using that here, but yeah. Okay, so wait, what was I thinking? I don't even know. But yeah, so find by email is another one. So find by email right there, and that just returns first. And you can use placeholders, question mark placeholders, or you can use the hash, right? So you can do email, and then you'd have to pass user find by email whatever, right? But in this case, we can just do that. So it's kind of like old school Rails, like generate find by, right? Is like, so you can. So the way I thought about this was like, let's do conventions on the SQL naming. So like these are like scopes, right? Like active record scopes. And the thing about scopes is like there's really no like conventions around them. Like the only conventions Rails has are like singular and plural and MVC stuff. But like when it starts to get into like business logic, there's really nothing. So I thought, okay, maybe I'll come up with like a set of naming conventions for the scopes or these SQL things. And hopefully it'll like ease the naming burden, because like obviously this is a lot of names, right? You have to name every single query, and it's not inline, so it's it's not generated dynamically, but it is. The trade-off is that it's a lot simpler to see what's gonna happen, right? So anyway, so I had like latest, oldest, right? When you like order by created at, and then like latest with, like so like you'd say with limit, right? And you can like even give it. Like this could be a parameter, right? Like with limit, and you can say whatever. Yeah, I guess that kind of opens the door for defaults. But anyway, so yeah, this is kind of like the old school Rails, like where now you do find by and it's like dynamic hash, but like before you would do it would generate these helpers, right? Like for every column. So this is kind of like the old school convention for that. And then obviously there's find for one, all. I stole that from Rails. So I stole a lot of stuff from Rails, but these are newer conventions. But I think the with and the by will get you pretty far in terms of like really simple queries. Obviously you can do like some crazy queries now. Like you can do much more, stuff. So like, and this is like logically consistent between view templates and view classes. And then this is like model classes and like model templates. So you can think of it like that, right? Like it's like almost the same, like logically. So this is cool, right? This is pretty cool. I'm not quite sure because I in the model code, when I return the row, it calls a new, and in initialize for the model, I actually just call this load method, and it just each arg that you give it, it does a public send, and it's constrained by the columns in the thing. So I really probably shouldn't do that. I probably should just whatever you return from the SQL query. So like if you did like a lot of crazy joins and stuff, like you said, user with to-dos, right? Or you would just say with to-dos, or you could just say to-dos, right? There we go. So like here you would say select from whatever user where, actually you would say select from to-dos, right? Where user ID equals whatever. But maybe you did want user stuff too, so you would say like join users. And like one thing that I don't know if a lot of people know about SQL is that there's this using join. So like if you can do an inner join, and if the column names are the same. So I worked at a company. Okay, so I think I'm not NDA anymore. So I worked at a company a while ago, and they were super smart. Like they were very smart, like very logical with their schema and everything. Like the schema design was everything. Like, we're not going to do any crazy algorithms, nothing. It was just, it's a CRUD app, but like for like health care stuff. And it was like all in C# and .NET. But their schema design was still to this day probably the best design schema I think I've ever seen. Like, Rails people get pretty lazy with their schema design, like, you know, because IDs are everywhere, and like, what's the ID? I don't know. What ID is this? You have to like scope it, right? Well, they had the genius idea to, since they were writing a lot of SQL. In fact, they wrote a lot of SQL. They had a lot of like what SQLite would call prepared statements, but it was actually, they had SQL running on the database server, so like store procedures, right, or prepared statements or whatever you call it. And so they knew instinctively, like, okay, this is going to cost a lot if we run the query in the application code and like try to send it over, like if we build the query and send it over the network. So like, forget that, we're just going to send a pointer, the store procedure name, and then the database server is going to run that. And so they had to scale database servers, right? And like, you would think, oh man, scaling database servers, that's terrible. But what they also did is multi-tenancy. So they had one, they had like a server had like a bunch of tenants on it, and like they just scaled, not horizontally, they scaled, yes, they just scaled horizontally. So they had multiple tenants on one database server, and then it would be like 50 or 100 tenants, and like when it got full or like crazy, they actually had like physical servers too, they co-located. And so they had all these tenants on one database server, and then whenever they got new customers, they would just add another server with like the other so all the databases were separate, and it wasn't like one shared database. So like, there's multiple ways to split up things that I don't think Rails people think about a lot. Like, they kind of just go, okay, there's one database, and this is a perfect thing for SQLite too. Like, SQLite could do this very nicely, where you have, especially for SaaS stuff where there's not a lot of like crossover between customers, you can have one database per customer and then just keep adding SQLite databases per customer. And then when they log in, the session determines which database file they connect to, right? So you can just name the database files. Anyway, I think about this stupid stuff all the time. So anyway, this is one way to do joins that I don't think a lot of people know. If the name of the column, so like, let's look at my schema here. So like, I have two tables, user and to do, right? So like, I named the column, the ID, the primary key column. Also, this annoys me about Rails is that in SQLite, you don't need auto increment to get it to auto increment. The row ID will become the integer primary key just by saying integer primary key. You don't need to call auto increment. It's actually, the docs say don't call auto increment. But what does Rails do when you generate a freaking migration? Auto increment. Of course it does. Of course. I have like a lot of nitpicks with it. Anyway, so if you name the column the same name as the table in like ID, for example, and then you come over here to do, because users have to-dos, and you say, oh, it's the same, user ID, right? And it references user ID, right? It seems like a lot of weird duplication, like why don't you just call it ID? But a normal join would be like join users on users.id, right? And then you would say like to-dos user ID, right? This is actually not right, but yeah, to-do user. And then you would say like user, right? Join user.id to use user ID, but you don't have to do that. If you name the columns the same, you can just say join user using user ID. I think I want to silly see. I just want to make sure that I'm not like totally join using statement. Let me see. Like I'm pretty sure it's very similar. Like I don't know if I have you know, there's also that like weird join where you can like do this like weird from multiple. But yeah, let me see. Hold on. Tutorials point. Come on, man. Are you serious? Are you serious? Just show me the thing. Let's see. Join. Are we gonna not cross join? No, not cross join. The inner join. Okay. Join on. Yeah, using. Okay, perfect. So yeah, you would just say join user using, and then you would say like user ID, right? So this is pretty cool. So it's still an inner join. It's not a natural join, which you don't want to do natural joins. But yeah, so it does this. It's really cool. Like so now you can say okay, now I might be able to use SQL to like do this stuff instead of active record or whatever, right? So that's kind of nice, like to think about this, like these little shortcuts like that are built into the SQL platform, right? Like you're like using the platform, just like the web. Like you don't want to get crazy with React or anything because you're gonna lose the back button, or like history is gonna be really hard. So you're gonna do server-side rendering just like you should. So this is similar, right? So you just use the thing as it is, and you get these like cool shortcuts that the SQL people have thought about, and they think about these things to like make it a little nicer. So this is cool. So yeah, if you did something like this where you said like to do and then you like wanted user too, I think I should relax the load here to not do public send, because it doesn't have those. It doesn't have that. When you call connect, it actually goes through all the column names in the table. But I think similar to what I did here, hello, like where I kind of like make a struct, and I like just take all the keys from the first row and just make that a thing. I should probably do that. And then you could do crazy joins and like return a bunch of stuff that like, you know, you can just return as much as you want, and like the underlying class will just, or the underlying objects will just all of a sudden have it, like, you know, so that you'll just have like to-dos, and then you'll say like to-dos first, and then you could say, oh, user whatever, right? So I think for this I would probably change this to underscore, or I could try to make a thing where you could say user dot, and it's kind of similar to active record, but like a lot less work. So that'd be kind of cool. I think maybe I might do that where I like make, anytime you like return a table that is a model or anything that's not in the columns. Yeah, I have to think about it. But yeah, that'll be really cool. So anyway, that's cool. But for now, it's just pretty basic. So yeah, that's like my one closure takeaway was SQL was really cool, and I thought, hey, what if I just put that and like marry it with ORMs? The last thing that I have done, which I gotta get out of here, but the last thing that I have done, if you're really interested in this, and you're interested in like my weird thinking, everything's up VOD, so you can always watch it. So the last thing that I did, which is new in Ruby 3, I thought, you know what? I hate Sidekick. Like, I don't hate it, but like I hate the complexity that it brings. You know, Redis now, you've got all kinds of stuff. Your Docker, you need Docker Compose because now you've got multiple things. Like, forget it. Like, I just want one Docker file, and I want to do like I want to do active job async, but I don't want active job async. I don't want to. I was using this thing called Sucker Punch, but it's like really old, and like Ruby 3 has this built in. Like, what can I do? So naturally, I made my own stupid Fiber server. Like, I made my own asynchronous server that is horrible, and it should not be used in production, but here I am. I've done it, and there we go. So Ruby has this new thing called Fibers, and it has a Fiber scheduler, and so Fibers are like lightweight, like Go routines or whatever. So like they're kind of like threads, but like more lightweight, and like it's all in process, and they're asynchronous, or they can be. So that's really cool. So what I did was, I thought if the whole server is asynchronous, so the first thing I didn't actually go to writing my own little stupid HTTP parser and stuff. I didn't do that right away. That's not the first thing that came to my mind. The first thing that came to my mind was Falcon, right? Falcon is the one that does the thing. So it's like, cool, I'm gonna try this. I tried it, and for some reason it couldn't load like my gems the way I wanted them to. So I have this config ru, and I just run this thing, right? This is probably my fault and probably not Falcon's fault. So I call rack up, right, with a host and port, and that's it, right? Like, why should it ever be different? Like, rack up should just always work, right? But of course, Puma and all the rest of them are like, no, you can't use rack up. It's not good enough. Like, it's gonna be slow. It's horrible. You got to use our special CLI thing, which evals config ru and like does some stuff. And I'm like, whatever. So anyway, I was like, fine. And then I did it, and it didn't work. It couldn't load this gem. I didn't want to use bundled exec, so I was like, whatever. So then I thought, okay, what else is there, right? So this other thing called TP, which is actually a lot faster than Puma. So it's a multi-concurrency, it's a multi-process, fiber-based, rack-compatible web server, right? That's a mouthful. But also the claim to fame is like this polyphony thing that they came up with. So it's like the abstraction on top of Fiber Scheduler. This Tippy thing is supposed to be, or TP, I don't know how they say it. I think it's supposed to be a TP because like look at the logo. But it supposedly does WebSockets. It does built-in SSL. It has HTTP2. It has automatic SSL certificates, which is like really crazy. Like, so you don't need a Nginx or Caddy front end to your thing. You don't need a proxy HTTP server. I'm like, cool. Like, that's really cool. It is fast. Like, I did try it and it is fast. But I forgot what the problem was with it. Yeah, I forgot. I did try this, but something was not right. But I honestly can't remember. Like, I tried to rack up, and like, yeah, I'm not sure what happened. Oh, I know what it was. It used a lot of memory, so I was like, forget it. I'll just use the one thing. So I think, but it only used a lot of memory because I think it had multiple processes going, and I wasn't prepared for that. So anyway. It does work and it's great, and you should probably use this. I should probably use this and not be like scared about memory. But so anyway, then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna see how hard it's gonna be to like write my own stupid HTTP parser in Ruby, like pure Ruby, no stupid dependencies. So finally I found Fiber Scheduler, right? So Fiber Scheduler is like a very naive implementation, not naive. It's kind of like the simplest version of like how do you do fibers in Ruby, right? Ruby doesn't ship with a fiber scheduler. You have to like implement it yourself. So I was like, I don't know how to do that, so I'm just gonna try to lean on this person. So that's what I did. So yeah, fiber scheduler is cool. I highly recommend it. It really works. The fibers actually work, like they're actually asynchronous. And so what does this give me? What is all this stupid, all this dumb, like, you know, making your own server, like this is crazy. What are you doing? Don't parse HTTP yourself, right? Like, don't do that. But anyway, I'm doing it, so whatever. So yeah, what is the point of all this? So the point is, every time a request comes in, there's a new fiber, right? So you can see it here. So there's one fiber scheduler that's running the whole server at the top. And then there's one fiber that runs the loop, right? And there's whenever a new request comes in, a connection gets made to a socket on the server. And there's another fiber scheduler that gets started, and it does all the stuff for each request, right? So it parses each request line. It gets the path, the query, the headers. I also copied this from around somewhere. And it gets the body, right, using content length. And then it creates the new rack env, right? So like it'll create this hash of rack environment stuff. And then it'll like put the headers in there too. And the body too, it's a string IO. And don't ask me about this set encoding ASCII 8-bit. Let's not talk about that. Rack has like some weird requirements. So anyway, so then it calls your app, right, that you set. And for here, I called it oatmeal because it's fiber, right? And oatmeal has a lot of fiber. I don't know if I'm going to settle. I don't even know if I'm going to do this ever. Like, I probably should use something else. But yeah, so you just call this rack handler thing. You know, it does the thing. So yeah, this is pretty cool. It's very stupid and dumb. And if HTTP freaks out for any reason, it also freaks out. So yeah, whatever. But it does work. So yeah, this enables me to, the whole point of all this is that here's a great example. So like if I go to user controller, right, and I see the user controller, and no, not user. If I go to sign up controller, right, and I look at this and I think, okay, this is cool, right? If the user is inserted, right, or save, I guess, right, created, you're related to the dev behind the digital fabric to be reinventing all the Ruby wheels. Yeah, no, seriously. I didn't even know. Look, I didn't even know this digital fabric thing like existed, and I was like, whoa, this is really cool. I can't believe like someone's really doing this like Ruby stuff. Like, yeah, no, actually, I think this person is they're French. Like they're not even. I didn't even know. But yeah, it's really cool. Like they're doing a lot of good work. They even look, check this out. They even have a new SQLite wrapper in C, which I think I'm gonna get into because I actually did do this with Janet too. I actually wrote like a SQLite wrapper in C for Janet, so it's not like it's super foreign to me, but it's supposedly better than the Sparkle Motion one, and it's like more up to date, I guess. Of course, SQLite never really changes, but yeah, I'm still using the Sparkle Motion one, but it's cool. Like it's really such a good idea. But anyway, yeah, so it's amazing. Your French cousin. Yeah, they also have their own web frame. Yeah, they even have what is it? And they also look, check this out. They even remade Markaby, right? And it's funny because they don't even talk about Markaby in here, I don't think. Like the history of like templating with Ruby. But like check it out. Look, it's exactly Markaby or Tubby. It's exactly the same. It's so funny. Like everyone's having the same thoughts. Yeah, I kind of gave up on that. I went to emote, but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, so this fiber scheduler is really cool because this looks like it's a job, right? Welcome email, new, user deliver later, but it's not a job. Okay, it's a scheduled fiber, so that's all it is, right? So this runs asynchronously in process with the same stuff. So like anytime, so this is like a little wrapper, but like honestly, like anytime you want to do anything outside of the thing, now you don't have to like set up a job and like have it like be weirdly like. Have you ever noticed that out of process jobs, I understand that you can like retry them and stuff, but you can probably do something similar with the fiber scheduler. But in Sidekick and Rails, like if you try to serialize the wrong thing, like a date in a job parameter, it fails, right? It doesn't know what to do. And so you have to like send like a date string and like reparse it yourself. And you have like this active record. You can send objects through it, but like it's a crazy hack. It's like they have this global ID thing, and like they map the IDs from active record as primitives, and they like map it back on the job server. Dude, it's crazy. Like I'm like, what is going on? No, if you had asynchronous stuff like in Go, you know how you do this in Go? All you do is you start a Go routine, and then it runs like out in the same process, but like asynchronous, like concurrently. Simple, done, like done. And then if you really want it to be like, well, what happens if it fails? Can I retry it? Blah, 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 blah. Dude, put it in a class, you know, say, insert it in the database, say, okay, we're running this class with these parameters. Okay, and then if it, you know, and then update that row if it fails or succeeds, right? It's super simple. Just don't go crazy. So anyway, you can just do this instead of deliver later. And this is really cool because now you can like see, right? And of course, like you could do something cool like async does, where you can say like, oh, it's async, like, oh, there's a block. But yeah, like now you can like see, oh, this runs out of process, right? And then, but it'll redirect right away. And this does work. I don't really care to show it, but yeah, it does actually work. Like I put a sleep in here to see like if it'll actually sleep 10 seconds and like redirect right away, which it does. So yeah, all this is really cool. Ruby 3 finally is catching up to stuff like Go. It's really cool. That's the stream, I guess. I don't know. I don't have anything else to say. That's all the crazy stuff I did, and I really need to stop doing this. I really need to just start shipping things again. But I think with this, I might be able to stop messing around with all this stuff and just do it. So that's really cool. So like, check out the gem list, right? So like, you look at the gem list, gem file. You have Fiber Scheduler. The mail gem, which I don't know. I might need to get rid of that. You have the mail gem. You have rack, of course, rack CSRF, and SQLite, right? This is the simplest stack. I think how many gems is that? 6 gems, right? This is the simplest web stack, the simplest rack Ruby web stack I've ever seen. It's crazy. Like there's not even any background. Fiber Scheduler, not only does it have the HTTP server, but it also does the background jobs, right? I understand like the whole like retrying and things, but I can always bolt that on. But yeah, So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I probably will use like polyphony or TP or whatever. I'll probably try to get it working because it'd be nice to like drop Nginx too. But yeah, I'm not sure. Like, still, I feel like you still want a reverse proxy because it's probably better than whatever you're doing in Ruby land. But yeah, it's cool. That's the stream. Matt, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I did like a weird ranty thing again, but I think next stream I'm gonna do like more Go stuff. I guess, like, I don't know, leak code or something. I have no idea. Because I really should learn Go like better, because Go is actually, for a GC language, it's very like crazy how the performance is, and I feel like I want that. So, and the compile times are really fast. So I don't know. All right, that's it. I will be back on Tuesday.